Look at the collection of the worst scumbags, the wretched hive of scum and villainy, which happens to be Hollywood. So, Hollywood producer Harvey Weinstein loses L.A. Struggle Snuggle case, receives a lot of prison time, and when you look at the everything else that's going on, not to excuse his actions, I don't mean it from that perspective, but you look at everything and you're like, that seems like a lot of time. It's not that it's not too much. It's like, yeah, for sure, give him all that time and more, but there's a lot of, I mean, how many images you have to read about or cases you have to read about people who are, have like the ankle monitors on. They're out like in Chicago and stuff. They're out on what happened to Lori Lightfoot? They're out on bail for stuff, and then they go on to commit more and more crimes. The CW Chicago is a website that covers just Chicago crime, and there's people repeatedly out for stuff, pretrial hearings, and even when they go to trial, it's like they're not going to do any time, who just keep committing more and more crimes. And like, this seems like there's a disparity in treatment here. Weinstein definitely deserves all this time and more, but I also think that somebody who robs the liquor store should also be getting 20 plus years, and that doesn't mean 20 plus years out in 6. That means 20 years out in 20 years. But we're in some strange days. Hey, but they got rid of Lori Lightfoot, so maybe their people are having a come to Jesus moment. Not a chance in hell. So he's blaming, or his idiot lawyer is blaming cancel culture for his imprisonment. But barring appeals, the Weinstein saga is probably coming to an end. Keeping it, unless, I don't know, Biden decides to, the people who get pardoned, like even Trump was doing that too. You look at the list of people getting pardoned, you're like, who really runs? This is why people talk about the deep state. Who really runs America? You look at the list of people that all the presidents pardon at the end of their term. You're like, this isn't good. This shouldn't be happening. Didn't they get due process? Anyway, so the Weinstein saga is coming to an end. But my point is, keep in mind, this is one guy who feels like one sacrificial lamb. He's a scumbag, don't get me wrong. He's a big name for sure, but so was Epstein. But where are the rest? And in that case, where are the guys who are, Ghislaine Maxwell's sitting in jail, and she's probably wondering how much time she has left on this mortal coil. But where are the guys who are on the client list? How come? So you got like Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell, or in this case Weinstein, but in Hollywood he's not alone. And with the Maxwell stuff, it's like, so they were like pandering and pimping to nobody. That doesn't, you're going to like take this the next step and go after the client list? Not so much. And if you, it's like, isn't it weird that you don't hear the media really harping on that? It's like, no, because the media doesn't want to get Epstein, which is now what, a verb? Is that a verb, an action? I don't know. But you know what I mean? It's like, yeah, it's kind of weird that the media is not covering any of this kind of stuff. Just the client list, like, who's talking about that stuff? Social media, people on Twitter and Gab. Gab is all over this kind of stuff, and mainstream media, not so much. Nobody's curious about how many trips Dershowitz took to the island. But, those are the wealthy and powerful, so the wheels of justice grind a little bit slow, or rather, they don't actually move at all in this case. They take the red herring, they throw it on the trail, and they move on to something else. So Weinstein is tied up in hashtag Me Too, which I think Melissa Milano was involved in somehow, which was a big, credit to her for that, which is a big movement for a few months. They were going through Hollywood, and they're going after Weinstein types of abusers, of which, unfortunately, there's no shortage in Hollywood, which should tell you something. And they got a few dozen guys, but then they started to notice some troubling coincidences. They're in Hollywood taking down powerful, abusive men. That's great, except guys in Hollywood who abuse women and occasionally men are going to be left-wing, very publicly left-wing figures, always posing with the Obamas or Clintons or Oprah Winfrey types. There's the image of Oprah Winfrey and Weinstein. Oprah Winfrey is offering some little blonde woman to Weinstein. It looks like a sacrifice to Moloch or something. So these guys are getting taken down, and the Hollywood Reporter and Variety magazine and Twitter was publicizing each new conquest of a scumbag, except that they were all very public left-wing figures with a history of left-wing activism and donations. And the funniest thing is when some of these guys are like giving to women's causes, like, there's just no, like, this Hollywood's just a collection of sociopaths, but it's not just the sociopaths who are committing the acts, but the people who are enabling all this behavior, because this doesn't exist in a vacuum. I think Leslie Headland was working for Weinstein. All the enablers know about all this kind of stuff, and like, if it wasn't for them, none of this stuff would have happened. They would have just started giving people warnings and quiet phone calls to the FBI or something to figure out something. Anyway, so eventually the puppet masters behind the scene get together and start telling the magazines, oh, yeah, you look like a scumbag, and social media influencers to dial it down a little bit. And little by little, you stop hearing about Me Too. And what's the other one? Hashtag Time's Up. I don't know the difference between the two of those things. You stop hearing about it, and they just kind of take the wind out of the sails, and it's just slowly people try to get something going on social media, and it's like the energy's just not there. You're like, this is not organic. Something else, some other machine. There's some Machiavellian machinations going on behind the scenes to protect the wealthy and powerful types. That's how easy it is to manipulate a movement, when you can just call up a publisher and slowly shut things down, and the Twitter idiots moved on to another shiny object and are allowing another generation of Weinsteins to crop up, because to them, the political optics are more important than protecting the women in Hollywood. Keep in mind, everyone knew about Weinstein. Courtney Love of Hull openly told women not to go up to his hotel room. I don't know. That was probably like 20, 30 years ago when she did that interview, where she flat out said it years ago. Everyone knew about him, but SAG or whoever, is involved in Hollywood is supposed to, they protect the people. They never did anything about it. Maybe work with the FBI to set up a sting or do something behind the scenes. Nope. They didn't care about the women because Hollywood is a collection of parasites who make propaganda. There's no saving Hollywood, which we've been saying for years, and people are slowly coming to that conclusion. It's a bunch of scumbags who are starting to make movies that fewer and fewer people want to see. The stuff coming out over the past 5 years is not even worth watching for free, especially when you think of the genre of the Marvel and DC superhero type of stuff. It's not even worth sailing for. Anyway, so no, this is not cancel culture. Cancel culture is going after Scott Adams for saying words on the internet. Weinstein was the actual cause of injury, the actus reus and the mens rea and all that type of stuff. Think about the energy expended by the media machine against Kanye, J.K. Rowling, Scott Adams, and the rest for words they said that hurt people's feelings or people. I mean, it's just like pseudo marketing dopamine outrage for clicks, where people see something they can jump on board with. It's like, we know you're not outraged over Scott Adams saying words on the internet. John Greenblatt is so outraged. And actually, Scott Adams had a pretty good comeback. He said, like, when your job is to find ghosts, you get paid to find ghosts. You're going to find ghosts no matter what. And that's pretty much what Greenblatt is all about with the ADL is a hate group. It came out. And they say, they go, it's okay to be white, that phrase. They go, that's a hate symbol. That's the ADL. Like, oh, so the ADL is just a hate group? Yeah, it's been a hate group the whole time. Glad you guys can get on board. Anyway, I mean, when you look at like who the media directs you to focus on, and none of this makes sense. There's people on the right who got banned from social media, Patreon, Bank of America, MasterCard, Chase, Wells Fargo, even Airbnb and rental car agencies, and anything that's in the mainstream if you're a public name. The social media and banking machine canceled right-wing political activists and their families in the case of Lauren Southern. But they didn't debank Weinstein or Epstein or kick down them or their families out of Airbnb or rental agencies or MasterCards or all the other stuff or all the other Hollywood abusers. You can be a literal worst kind of felon, get out of prison or get out on bail or whatever, and get a Wells Fargo account, get on GoFundMe, Twitter, MasterCard, no problem at all. In fact, if they tried to cancel you, then the Twitter activists would be outraged over it. You're like, that doesn't make any sense. You're trying to cancel, like, Kanye for saying words, but you're not, like, you'd be outraged when people who actually committed harmful acts get any kind of pushback. Oh, well, they pay their debt to society. But no, I mean, you can't pay your debt for hurting people. There's no. I mean, none of that makes sense. Or Laura Towler or Mark Collette get unpersoned because they're English nationalists in England. All this stuff is insane, and nobody is doing anything about it. Where the media shines a laser pointer is where the cat's attention will go. The white pill is that alt media is growing and the mainstream media is dying because they're not anything but a propaganda branch of the left. So the mainstream media sees alt media growing, Odyssey, Bit Chute, all these other platforms and people. Like Odyssey and Rumble are just, there's so much stuff out there. that is just not what YouTube wants anymore, which is fantastic that people are finally moving over to those two platforms. So, but the mainstream media sees it, and like they know their numbers are dying. They know people are not watching CNN or listening to the narrative like they used to, because there's only 24 hours in the day, and every time there's an alt media perspective coming out, even if it's something as milquetoast as a salty type who's at least putting out a counter narrative somewhat, that's a minute in the day that you're not watching the mainstream programming. And the puppet masters behind the scenes at CNN, MSNBC, they see that and they just lose their freaking minds that someone would, God, who was there's that couple on MSNBC. Oh, I forget the names. The guy, I think the one guy was found with his secretary who passed away in his office, and he had like a lock on an internal electric lock on his door and a bunch of weird stuff. And they're talking about it, and they're just outraged that the idea that people are not getting their quote unquote news from the MSNBC, and they're getting it from online people in their basements with cell phones. Yeah, who are probably giving you a more balanced perspective. I mean, like, what the mainstream is. It's a lie, and once you know it's a lie, you have to throw it out. It's like, oh well, I agree with it when they say things that I agree with, but yeah, but it's a lie. The whole thing, it's like the algebra game or something. It's like liar's dice. I mean, the mainstream is lying to you. You can't just get on board with them because they half the time they say things you agree with. And it's like, well, they're just fluffing you up. It's like the whole thing is a lie. You got to throw it all out the window. Anyway, the alt media can ask questions that the mainstream media won't, about like the things I just said. It's like you don't see the kind of stuff covered in the mainstream media because they're a bunch of parasites. Anyway, this guy was in Hollywood for like 30 years doing this stuff. Everyone knew. Courtney Love knew about it. She must have been fighting him off. And she's the music industry. He's not able to exert as much pressure over there. But everyone knew about this for decades, and they just let these women get abused. And some of it's like, people are being used to different extents. But, he's also in prison for, actually doing things. But it's like they just let it happen. You got to look at Hollywood and think, oh, the whole thing, the whole industry needs to be burned down or reformatted. Or the best thing that Hollywood is doing is like they're making bad movies, so people are finally looking at Hollywood in a whole different light and go, oh, this is, I mean, the stuff that's come out lately, like Ant-Man, or I know these are just stupid superhero movies, but they're kind of indicative of where it's a window into their mind. Or the Black Widow movie. Those are kind of two examples of movies you look at and you're like, there's really nothing here. It's not good. It's bad. It's bad. It's like, it's more, the needle is on the bad side, but it's not horrible. But it's just not anything. It's just, yeah, okay, there's a moving collection of screens, and I know you race swapped a bunch of characters, and there's some girl power, and there's some left-wing messaging, and it's not enough that you get up out of the theater. So it's like, it's just nothing. It's not worth paying for, and as a consequence, I think both the Ant-Man's probably going to underperform, and I think the other one, Black Widow, actually probably lost money, and a bunch of Marvel movies lost money, and DC too. It's the same thing. So you look at all these movies, like, there's no point in making stuff like Suicide Squad Part 2 if you're not going to make something good, and I think that lost money also. Anyway, like, comment, subscribe. I'll see you guys on the next episode.